Thank you so much, Victoria, for being on Rudaw. Today I see it's very crowded here. A lot of people are coming here to attend your conference. Is there that much interest to the Iraqi issue, Iraqi topic here in Washington?
Well, so I guess, I have to say I'm really both surprised and happy to see such a huge crowd of people here in Washington, D.C., some also who traveled from around the United States to be part of these discussions on Iraq. And so I think what this shows is that there is actually quite a bit of interest in the United States still in what happens in Iraq, in the U.S.-Iraq partnership. I think from the administration, we've seen quite a bit of interest from key players like Ambassador Tom Barrack in the Iraq file, and that's a great sign. But, overall in the intervening decade, we have seen a decline in U.S. focus on Iraq. There's been a little bit of Iraq fatigue. Iraq has not been at the top of the headlines, but I think that is something we from the Iraq Initiative are trying to counter and to make sure that we keep Iraq in the discussion and in focus.
And a few days ago, President Trump told me we put a guy to be the prime minister and he won by a lot. So did the United States put him to be the Iraqi designated prime minister? Is that, how do you read this statement from the US president?
So I think what I see is, of course, the United States played a very big role in blocking the nomination of former Prime Minister Nouri al-Maliki. All along, we knew that whoever was selected by the coordination framework would need to be a candidate that was supported or accepted by both the United States and Iran. Prior to the decision by the framework to publicly announce Ali al-Zaidi as the candidate, of course, the framework ran that name by the United States. And so I think, of course, the U.S.
Has been vetted
support and allowed that nomination to move forward.
There's a big challenge in front of him, and you've discussed the Iraqi militia groups. Do you think that he will be able, even with the U.S. support, to address this issue, or he cannot do it, as the previous prime ministers tried, but they failed?
I think that, of course, we've seen statements from the United States that are very positive about the nomination of Ali al-Zaidi. I think we have to remember that he faces the same challenges that Prime Minister Sudani faced, both in terms of militia influence, the penetration of the militias into both the political and economic system. These are systemic issues that do not just depend on the Prime Minister to address. It's going to depend upon a concerted effort by the whole coordination framework, by the other elements within the Iraqi political and security system to really address. And I don't think that we can expect really quick progress. This is a problem that emerged over a period of decades as the militias continue to grow in influence and power, and it's not a change that's going to happen overnight. I think there's steps that the next government can and should take to begin to limit their influence, but we shouldn't delude ourselves in thinking this is going to be a quick and easy process.
So do you think that he will take a further step that the previous prime ministers couldn't do it?
I think that what we have to see is who backs him within the coordination framework. Of course, there's a lot of speculation that Ali al-Zaidi is close to several key figures that are either in the coordination framework or affiliated with the coordination framework. And so those connections and that political support will be critical if he's able to move forward on any of the issues that are part of the next government's agenda. And that includes not only dealing with the militias, balancing the foreign policy towards the United States and Iran, but also I think a looming economic crisis as the Strait of Hormuz is closed and Iraq is unable to export oil.
So I've covered Washington for a long time. I used to ask questions about the Kurdish issue, and the Kurdish issue was always one of the topics that he is engaged with, both Baghdad and Erbil, when the government is forming, and also when they are talking to the Iraqi officials. But I don't see that topic very much coming at the surface nowadays. Why the U.S. is not paying attention to the Kurdish-Iraqi disputes now? Is there other priorities, or they don't care about this issue anymore?
Well, I think we've seen this administration weigh in at key moments when there were, specific issues that were impacted, like reopening the Iraq-Turkey pipeline. But you're right. I don't think this administration has been as interested in brokering agreements and dealing with salary issues as previous administrations might have. I don't think that means that they do not think that Kurdish issues are important, but I do think that means that we're not going to see the kind of day-to-day engagements that you might have seen previously.
And how do you see the U.S. approach towards the Kurdish file here in Washington, D.C.? They haven't formed the government years. They don't have an active parliament, and we see that there's not much engagement between the Kurdish government and the U.S. government, or at least this administration. How do you see this evolvement?
So I think there has been quite a bit of engagement between this administration and with Erbil and Sulaymaniyah, but on specific issues like Syria, on the pipeline, on government formation in Baghdad. But as you said, not as much focus from this team on trying to push the PUK and KDP to form the government in Erbil. That has not really risen to the top of the agenda for them.
So I will ask my last questions. You had some other guesses they were expected to be here, even from Erbil or Sulaymaniyah, and then from Baghdad. Why they are not here?
So, it's unfortunate that the government formation process coincided almost exactly with the timing of our conference. We were really trying to ensure that we had people from across the political spectrum, both in Baghdad and Erbil as well as Sulaymaniyah. Some of them were unable to come due to prior engagements related to the government formation process, but we hope they will come to next year's conference.
Can I ask one more question?
Sure.
Last conference, I remember that they had Kurdish translation, but I don't see it now.
Yeah. But
why?
We have most of our Kurdish guests at this conference right now are English speakers, and so that's reflecting the simple reality. But what we do have is a broad range of both Kurdish analysts and Kurdish politicians here to make sure that Kurdish views are incorporated.
Thanks so much, Victoria, for being with Rudaw. Thanks for doing this amazing conference.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.